let's have a little gander at the sort of bottom 3, and then let's look at, and then we'll see if we've got any super chats or anything to catch up on at that point. All right, so I get my stats, my competitive stats from 40k Meta Monday. And what these stats show is basically like how many players played a certain faction, so basically he gets all of the tournament data on like BCP and other like tournament apps. He brings it all together, and then he works out the average win rate for each faction and how many players went like 5-1, 5-0, or 4-1, and it gives you a really good idea of like how each faction is doing. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, check out the links that I've just popped down in the chat and popped down in the description of the video. So coming in last place, I think to no one's surprise at this point, we have got the Deathwatch, man. Oh, they've just been so bad. They have been bad since before 10th edition officially went live. So 10th edition was announced. GW released, well, it was sort of pre-announced, and then GW released like the free indexes, but they hadn't like fully released the game. And then everyone went, oh cool, you can do this like one combo with Deathwatch. And then GW basically went, no, the rules don't work like that. And then literally since the beginning of 10th, they've just been nothing. Just nothing. I think there's a lot of chit and chat, there's a lot of rumors right now that Deathwatch are going to go away as an independent faction, and that they're going to get rolled into a Agents of the Imperium Codex. There must be a reason why Games Workshop isn't giving them their due care, their tender love, or their TLC, tender love and care. But the problem is that they need to tell people. If they came out and were like, yeah, we're not updating them until the Codex comes out, everyone would be like, okay, fine, like, we understand. But what kills factions more than anything else is not being bad, it's being uncertain about their fate. So people won't invest in a faction, people won't play a faction, they won't buy models for a faction if they think that their fate is uncertain. And that's not just from like a competitive point of view, that's from an everything point of view. If you just play casually, if you just play narratively, if you just play Crusade, if you play this game, if you interact with this game beyond painting and hobbying, you're not going to buy a faction if you think that those models, you're not going to get your personal full enjoyment out of them. So you're not going to play Deathwatch. You're not going to collect Deathwatch if you don't think you can play Deathwatch, basically. So and this is reflecting the stats, the fact that Deathwatch have got 3 players, and those 3 players between them won 4 games out of 15 played. I mean, that is horrendous, man. Yeah, Deathwatch, GW, you need to tell the people what's happening with them, because right now you're killing them by just letting them wither on the vine, essentially. So, but unfortunately, they're just doing badly, and there's just not enough players there. Speaking of a faction which is suffering a little bit from player count as well, we've got Dark Angels. Dark Angels are, I think, struggling with the fact that it's not that it was a super unpopular way of playing the faction, but I would strongly argue, and I don't mean this in a horrible way, but I would strongly argue that maybe Green Wing, and I'll explain what Green Wing is in a second, Green Wing was at the very least the least cool faction, and at the worst the least popular sub-faction. But that is essentially what the Dark Angel Codex is now. It's just Green Wing. Green Wing is where you don't take the cool shit like the Deathwing, the Terminators, and you don't take the other cool shit, the Raven Wing, the guys on the bikes, and instead you basically take Green Wing was like all the normal basic bitch, all the normal basic bitch like space and units that Dark Angels have access to. So the issue is that basically people who want to play Dark Angels want to play them as Raven Wing. People who want to play Dark Angels want to play them as Deathwing. And the problem is that they can't do that because those factions are so utterly bad that we're getting to the point now where literally literally 0 people this week out of 724 players. No one played Deathwing. One person played the basic Dark Angels attachment and he lost 4 out of 5 games. And one person took Ravenwing and he lost 3 out of 5 games. And everything else is just... So, Dark Angels, again, they're in a funny sort of way. They're in a similar boat to Deathwatch, where their codex came out and everyone was like, oh, this isn't a Dark Angels codex. We might as well just play with the Space Marine codex. So that's a bit of an issue with them. Now, going through their stats right now, 13 players is 13 players is low for Dark Angels, frankly. It's low. Dark Angels are I would argue they're traditionally one of the more popular Marine specialist Marine chapters. You know, Marine chapters who get their own book. Dark Angels are definitely one of the more popular ones. They're probably third after. I'd probably say they're Blood Angels are the most popular. We're not talking Ultramarines. Ultramarines are their basic codex ones. So Blood Angels, I'd think, are the most popular, followed probably by Black Templars, and then you've got maybe Black Templar and Space Wolves are kind of equal, and then I think it's like Dark Angels after that. Blood Ravens don't have their own book, under command, unfortunately. So 13, so that's low player numbers. If I was GW, that would be the number that would scare me the most. 22 wins out of 63 games played, with means only a 35% win rate. Now, one person on the Dark Angel team went 4-1, and he was using Ironstorm Spearhead, which continues to prove to be. It's weirdly, even though it's got a very low win rate, it shows that basically what this shows is that most competitive players aren't playing, who want to play like Ironstorm and who want to play Space Marines, aren't playing Dark Angels. And there's like a few competitive minded people in this sub-faction, but by and large, the competitive community, the meta chasers, have kind of given up on them. So, not a good week to be Dark Angels. Having a 35% win rate is very low. And considering the player numbers this week are pretty high, like 724 is very average, is very normal. It's not a quiet week. That's a very worrying number. That's a very worrying set of numbers, I would say. Dark Angels are doing badly because the flavor's not there, and the power, there's other factions that can use the generic Space Marine detachments better than them. We've then got the last, the third from bottom, sort of the last of the bottom three, and that is Tyranids. Now, Tyranid numbers, 36 is actually not bad. Sort of just in isolation, 36 isn't bad at all. But I think it's not great for Tyranids. Now, what I mean by that is Tyranids traditionally are quite a popular faction, and also we have to remember, like, Tyranids were in the Leviathan box set. Like, Tyranid numbers Tyranids should be like the second most popular faction. And I think what essentially has happened is Tyranids have burned through their Leviathan stockpile, for lack of a better term. So all the people that jumped into the game with Tyranids with 10th edition because of the Leviathan box set, all those people have either moved on to something else or aren't playing the game anymore. Or, basically what we're back down to here is a few people that are sticking it out, but the majority of it will be the hardcore sort of Tyranid people. Which is a shame because, Tyranids are a really interesting faction and a good one. But the problems with Tyranids, nothing has changed. Fundamentally, nothing has changed Tyranids since day one. They do not have enough anti-tank. They do not have enough damage output. Now, we're talking very generally here. Someone will be able to point me to a list that can do both of those things fantastically. But long story short, what I've been saying about Tyranids every single week since their release is, where is the anti-tank? And in a meta of vehicles, not having an anti-tank is very bad. Now, 38% is a particularly new low for Tyranids, but it'll be the big thing will be to see if they stay that low. Yeah. Now, diving into the numbers a little bit here, we've got 36 players, 66 games won out of 172 games played, giving them a 38% win rate this weekend. That is 6% lower than their average win rate of 44%. And this week, they had one player that went undefeated, and apparently that player won an event with them. And apparently the player that won that event did so with Invasion Fleet. So there's still some potential into this. They're not a bad faction. They're just a struggling faction because of the lack of anti-tank. Okay, so Tyranids managed to win an event going 5-0 at a 47-player GT. So at a normal-sized GT, they won it, which is cool. And you can see they were up against some stiff competition, but it's interesting seeing who is in the top 3. Tyranid Sisters and Drukhari. That's an interesting top 3 to say the least. But hey, Green Tide, Votan being in a top 5 is also pretty significant. So I think this is not to be dismissed, but I also think there probably is an element of local meta here. An element. I could be wrong, but I'm gonna go with there being an element of local meta. Now, that's the overall turn win rates going through. We can see Unending Swarm is slowly becoming more popular. 5 people, this time making it the second most popular detachment. 48% win rate is very, very good. In fact, that's the highest detachment win rate for the NIDS. And Unending Swarm has the highest detachment win rate for NIDS in general over the long term as well. So Unending Swarm is definitely the way to go. It just takes a bit of finesse to make work, and obviously it takes a lot of money because a lot of people and a lot of painting time as well. You've got Static Nexus, which we had 3 people play. Vanguard Onslaught, which had 4 people play. Invasion Fleet continuing to be the most popular with 20 people playing it, which is a big deal. And then 4 absolute mad lads running Crusher Stampede. There's still some tools in that toolbox which can get you wins. There's still ways to squeeze a bit of juice out of the faction and do well in local metas. But they are not a super major winning tournament. They're not a super major tournament winning faction consistently. Someone will do it, but not consistently. So Genestealer Cult right now are what we would say are in sort of the limbo. So you can actually see what's interesting is GSC are getting a respectable number of players. There's actually as many people playing GSC. There's actually more people playing GSC than Dark Angels this week, which is very, very telling. I actually think there's going to be 2 reasons for this. I think there's going to be a few people that are going to be dusting off their old Genestealer Cult collections just to get a bit of a feel for the faction again. Maybe get a bit of prep or practice in before the full codex actually drops, just to sort of get a bit of a take on them. I also think that you will find that there's just with the codex coming out, there's a bit more interest in there, but it's difficult to really put much emphasis on the results that we get from the GSC right now, because when their codex drops, all of this is going to change. So they're a little bit of limbo. There's a little bit of reason why we're seeing some more players coming back. Raftario, Deathlock's bottom, yeah. But yeah, GSC are definitely on the cusp of becoming interesting. This does seem like a little bit of a bad week for them, going 39% when normally they're 54%. And I have to say I was surprised when I saw this, because GSC had been a bit of a roll recently. But don't despair, Cult players. 2 people did manage to go 4-1. So the Cult still have a bit of a sting in their tail, but I think everyone's looking forward to that codex coming out just to spice things up, because they've had that sort of one shitty gimmick for a while, and I think we're all hoping that it might get fixed. Blood Angels, it definitely seems like there's a few factions which are feeling a bit down this week. Blood Angels having a solid number of players, almost double that of the Dark Angels. So clearly, like I said, Blood Angels have always been a very popular faction. 23 players, 49 wins out of 133 games. 2 people going 4-1, but no one going 5-0, and no tournament wins. 43% win rate, which is 5% down from the average of 48%. And in terms of where those players are, all of them bar 4 were playing Sons of Sanguinius, which, if you actually get into that, has basically almost an unchanged win rate. So this win rate here is being let down by all the rando players that decided to run non-Sons of Sanguinius Blood Angels. But if you actually peer into the true data down here, you'll realize that all of this is where everything's happening. This is where the player numbers are. This is where the victories are. This is where the percentage is. This is where the 4 and 1s are. Here we go again. Space Marines. So this is basic Space Marines. This is not specialist Space Marines. So we had 36 players, which is a decent number for them. Although this is a fairly settled number. You know, this is basically the same number each week. That is because a lot of people are changing out, and actually this number goes down. This number goes down a little bit every week, and that's because more people are jumping onto taking their Space Marines as Blood Angels. Yeah, their Ultramarines this week will be Blood Angels. Next week, their Ultramarines will be whichever what is it like? Will be Space Wolves or will be Black Templars. Basically, more and more people are not running basic Space Marines, but there's always going to be a fundamental sort of baseline number of people because Space Marines are the baseline faction. 44% win rate is actually 2% up over their average. They actually won a tournament this weekend, which is cool. Naturally, that win did occur with Ironstorm Spearhead, which is basically it is the most popular way of running your Space Marines. Vanguard getting some interesting results. Well played to the sneaky Vanguard boys. Week on week, we are seeing Vanguard getting good results. So we can no longer say it's an anomaly, and I think we have to say there is some real play here. Speaking of memes, though, Stormland Sky is back. Clearly, he's back from his holiday of being a Space Wolf player. And Anvil Siege Force guy never left. He's still holding the line. Well played and Godspeed to both of these brave, beautiful motherfuckers. Tau. Lol, 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 lol. Tau. Gets Codex. Does worse. Oh. The Tau Codex dropped, and we've not seen an explosion of players, but at the same time we've not seen a reduction in players. It's kind of stayed a little bit steady. 37 players, 86 wins out of 183 games, 7 people going 4-1 or better is very, very impressive. And they actually won a tournament this weekend with Tau. So as much as we sort of lol at Tau, I think we actually have to dig a bit deeper here. And there definitely is... There's some scary shit going on here with Tau. So if we actually look, 4 players took Kion. They won 11 out of 20 games, giving this attachment a 55% win rate, which is an increase. And half of those players went 4-1. Monka, 16 players, 38 wins out of 80. 2 people going the distance, 48% win rate, up over 45. Retaliation Cadre, good numbers, good wins out of a good number of games. 3 people going 4-1, and actually one of them going all the way. This number up significantly over this number. I think right now, my advice would be, we've got 5 Recruit Hunting Pack players as well, for those that are curious, getting 10 wins out of 25 games played with a 40% win rate, which is down from 51%. My analysis of Tau right now is they have just got their codex. It was a significant change from their last codex, but I believe I said this last time I did a Meta Monday as well. Do not underestimate the Tau. These guys only need to find like 1, 2, 3 at most sort of broken combos. They only need a bit of time to find the juice from the squeeze, and they will find that juice. So my analysis of the Tau Codex is that it's going to get better over time, and they are going to find more and more crunchy combos. So do not dismiss the Tau. You know, we can slightly smirk, but I think that they have a chance of wiping that smirk off our faces. Chaos Space Marine Codex hitting the shelves for, I think this is the first tournament with Chaos featured. The first weekend with the new Chaos featured. It might be the second weekend. It's the first time that I'm covering it. So, 34 players. Interesting, you know, again, a faction with a recent codex drop, but not a huge like change in the number of players. 75 wins out of 170 games played. 5 people going the distance. 44% win rate, down very slightly from their 47% win rate, but 2 tournament wins. Now, significantly, there were 2 players that went with pack-bound zealots. That is the traditional Chaos 10th edition detachment. Those 2, this is a small sample size, but they won 8 out of 10 games. One guy went 3-2, one guy went 5-0, and won a tournament. When we first saw pack-bound zealots, and we saw that you know, if you failed the leadership test, you didn't get your mega buff, people dismissed it. I actually spoke to a couple of Chaos players recently, tournament Chaos players recently, and they were like, yeah, it's changed a bit, and yeah, it's probably not as good, but it's still very, very, very good. So I think pack-bound zealots maybe got shat on a little bit. I'm not certain it deserves to get shat on. I think give this time. Give this time. Very small sample size though. Veterans of the Long War, very small sample size. Only 1 player. He did go 3-2. Well played to him. Good job. Renegade Raiders. So this is the one that a lot of people have said seems to be the best Chaos attachment, and it is getting some very strong results. Renegade Raiders, 19 players, by far the most, more than every other detachment put together. 50 wins out of 95 games played. 4 players going the distance, with 1 person actually winning a tournament. 53% win rate this week, 53% win rate on average. Renegade Raiders is the new favorite Chaos attachment, and it's pulling out the results to prove that it deserves to be that popular. So I think when we went over the leaked Chaos Codex, we all saw this one, and when it just feels solid. It's like it's got not the most like punchy fucking like rules, but there's no shit in there either. It's all killer, no filler. Soulforge Warpack is one that a lot of people were getting kind of sticky knickers about, but on sort of when reading it, but it doesn't seem like people have committed to it, with only 3 players picking it up. I suspect that it is a very powerful detachment, and it has got a 47% win rate, which is good, but it does kind of shake itself apart. Also, it does rely upon people having a lot of demon engines, and demon engines are cool. Like, people do have like a fair few of them, but it's not like Nidzilla, which is like always been a kind of play style. You tend to find that a lot of Chaos players have some demon engines, but very few have all the demons. Slaves to Darkness. I think, is that not the old index attachment? So maybe for some reason the old index attachment's here. It's not done very well. 30% win rate. Oh dear. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. So, Alpha Legion. The Deceptors. Quite arguably, or should I say, the coolest attachment in the book, had a 7% win rate. Not 17. Not 70, 7. I have to say, unfortunately, as someone who has played it, this does not surprise me. That detachment is full of amazing ideas and incredibly cool concepts. But when I played it, almost none of the niche situations that came up that would have benefited from the detachment. It's cool on paper, and yet it struggles to translate into reality. But that ain't the worst of it. Dread Talons. I know a lot of Night Lord fans were excited for this. Unfortunately, Dread Talons had a 0% win rate. And that wasn't because no one took them. Some brave, beautiful bastard, whoever you are, went 0-5 with them and went 0%. Death Noise Marine, poor Warforge. I suspect this is the first week. I think we'll see Deceptors and Dread Talons go up. I think we will. This is just it's a small sample size, and both of these are the most specialist, and both of these require the most finesse play. Now, there's not been enough time for people to get the perfect combination of specialist units to make either of these attachments sing, and there's not been enough time for people to get enough practicing with them to hone their blade and develop that finesse. Give these time, and I think they will do better. People will just, some beautiful bastards need to just commit to them and try and get a 3 and 2 with them. And I think you could go 3 and 2 with them. I think you could. The one that surprises me the most is the Fellhammer Siege Host. I have to say, I really thought this one looked strong on paper. When I looked at this, I was like, this is one of the big 3. It's going to go this Renegade Raiders. This and Renegade Raiders will going to be like the top 2, I mean. Only one guy ran the Iron Warriors, and he went 0%. He went 0-5. So, this I'm very surprised about. I played into Fellhammer, and it was tough to kill it. So I definitely think that this one will change over time. Again, not a lot of people. This one benefits from you being hugely mechanized up, and yet Chaos Space Marines have essentially refused to mechanize up over the course of 10th edition. They have refused to do it. Death Guard have done it. Sisters have done it and seen great results. Chaos Space Marines have refused to do it. I actually played against the Warforge in a battle report, and the battle report coming out this weekend. And the number one takeaway that we had from that game is that Mech Chaos has huge potential. Huge. So there we go. Now whereabouts are we up to? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 16, 17, 18. So we've got a little bit more to go. So what I'm going to do, guys, is before we get into the next wave, I'm just going to quickly get a drink. Okay, so I'll be back in 60 seconds. I'm going to grab a quick drink, and then we'll catch up on maybe these 3. Maybe we'll do up to guard. Okay, we'll do up to guard, and then we will catch up on the super chats. Okay, so Rex here, Ishmael Thompson, River Main, Gathering Clouds, and Macariism 41. Thank you to and Matt CC92. Thank you to all of you guys for your support on Twitch and on YouTube. You haven't been missed. I will give you proper thank yous in about 5-10 minutes. Okay, thank you, boys. Thank you for your patience as well. Chaos Demons. 22 players. 49 games won out of 110 games played, with 2 people going 4-1 with a 45% win rate this weekend, with an average of 49%, but no one won a tournament. Same thing week in, week out. The Chaos Demons, a very, very, very consistent faction. Oh man. What can I say about Chaos Demons that hasn't already been said. They take big monsters. They have enough tricks and shenanigans to win a few games, but they just don't have enough to consistently go and win. They don't have enough to ever beat the top faction that you're almost certainly going to encounter at the top, when you get to the top table. Chaos Demons, same shit, different day. Maybe, I don't know, maybe someone needs to try something other than Demon Monster Mash. I feel like I have never, I will repeat this again, this is not an exaggeration, I have not been to a single 10th edition tournament where a Chaos Demon player has run anything other than a few big demons with a little bit of support. That's it. I've never seen anyone run any kind of horde. I've never seen anyone run any medium-sized monsters. I've never seen anyone try anything other than 4 or 5 big monsters followed by a few little squads. There's probably a very, 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 very good reason for that, but it does seem like this entire codex is a one-trick pony. This entire is a one-trick pony. Eldar. Eldar have settled into a really nice position at the moment. They are on 45 players is really like very, very respectable. It's no longer like the 90, 100 plus players that they had every week, but 45 players is very respectable. 96 wins out of 212 games played gives them a 45% win rate, which is almost perfectly in line with their 46% average win rate. And they actually had 6 people go 4-1, and they actually won a tournament. Dare I say it? GW has finally got Eldar right. They nerfed them and nerfed them and nerfed them until they are at this point now where they're still powerful enough that people want to play them. They're still powerful enough where people can win games with them. They're still powerful enough where their community can consistently go 4-1 with them. And they're still powerful enough where they can, every so often, squeak out a tournament win. But they're not so oppressively powerful that people are complaining about them every single fucking minute of every single fucking day. Yeah. Yeah. So, there we go. They're a strong faction with lots of play. They're in a good position, and they're particularly popular. Eldar are probably exactly, I would say Eldar are exactly where they need to be right now, which is good. Which is good. You know, Eldar should. There's nothing wrong with being powerful. There is something wrong with being oppressive. Yeah. Until the codex breaks them again. I wouldn't be surprised if GW has taken that codex out and put it like a full rewrite, because they probably started pre-writing it before 10th dropped, and now they're like, fuck. We can only hope anyway. Death Guard. I love me smelly boys. I love these smelly bastards. Death Guard are in such a nice place right now. They're in a similar place to Eldar. They're not quite as popular. Like, there's only 25 Death Guard players this week. But that is that's a very solid community for a faction that was last in a starter box in 8th edition, and who started the edition very shakily, and who has not had a codex. Like 25 players is not had a codex like recently. 25 players is fine it's a very normal number for the week that we're having. 53 victories out of 117 games played gives them a 45% win rate. 2 of those people also, so just under 10% of those players were able to go 4-1, but no one won a tournament. I kind of get that. So as someone who recently ran his Death Guard first time at a tournament, they kind of dominate the middle and upper middle boards, but then you take your Death Guard and you run into like full-blown Black Templar Ironstorm Spearhead, and you realize that you don't quite have the juice. You don't quite have what it takes to go all the way. So Death Guard can, a bit like Eldar, you know, they can go most of the way. They're very powerful. They have the ability to win tournaments, but they're not oppressing the meta in any way, shape, or form. Speaking of oppressive, we come to Death Guard. Death Guard are oppressive, like individually, like facing them. They can be oppressive, but in terms of like their overall effect on the meta, they're not oppressing it. Not like Necrons and Eldar were. But yes, playing into them can be very difficult if you're not prepared for it. But most top armies can kind of overwhelm their localized oppressive. World Eaters. World Eaters are in the same position as Chaos Demons. They have a stable number of players. They're able to produce a stable result of 45% win rate. This is somewhat in line with their win rate of 48% weekly. It's a little bit lower, but you do allow for fluctuations of sort of 5% or 3% really. And they had 3 people that went 4-1, but no one had taunt with them. It's the exact same thing as Chaos Demons. They have one trick. They take Angron and they yeet Angron at people, and then basically you take a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Make sure your blood tithe is rolling, and yeah, there you go. So everything that I pretty much said about Chaos Demons, you apply to World Eaters as well. It's a few big things supported by a few little things, and you kind of hope that you can pressurize the enemy by rushing them whilst the little things hold the objectives. Exactly, Icanthos. With a dozen data sheets, yeah, they don't have the variety. I have to say, as cool as it was, World Eaters getting their own, their own thing. Their own codex, their own faction. I do think that they need more. Yeah. Death Guard have got so much more unit variety than World Eaters. The Astra Militarum, yes, the Emperor's true finest, did very, very well this week. Really respectably. So, firstly, we had 46 players, which I believe made us the 3rd or 2nd most popular faction of the entire weekend. There was Grey Knights who had 42. There were Orcs which had 61. Necrons who had 46. So we were the joint 2nd most popular faction with fucking Necrons, boys. Just consider that only a few weeks ago, Necrons were the most popular faction, undisputed. So we've gone up a little bit and they've come down a little bit. Nice. So the popularity of the faction is really starting to show out. I've seen way more people turning up to tournaments with Guard, which is awesome. And what's also really cool is I've had other people telling me about their tournament experiences, and they've been saying like, look, they've been looking around the gaming hall and there's Guard everywhere, which is cool, man. 101 games played. Sorry, 101 games won out of 219 games played, giving us a 46% win rate, which is perfectly in line with our average of 46%. So Guards seem in a really solid position. There have been times when we would kill for 46%, and now like 46% is just cool. It's just fine. We've been at like a 42 to 45%, and now like a 46% win rate faction for like ages, and that's great. I have to say, I do think Guard are in a really great position right now. Not only do we have the player numbers and our faction is getting a lot of representation now, but on top of that, we have, people can't like say, oh, Guard's a shit faction anymore, because we are getting just the raw number of wins to just prove like that's just not true. Like we are a good faction. Like 101 wins is great, and on top of that, 46% win rate puts us right in the Goldlock zone for where GW wants us to be, and that means but we're at the bottom end of that Goldlock zone, so we're gonna probably still receive a few tweaks, but there's no real like oppressive Guard playstyles now. So most of those tweaks that we'll get will either be little buffs, Or if, you know, the meta of rounds changes, we get little tweaks to basically keep in line with that meta, which is good. What I really like, though, is that every week, week in, week out, we are seeing Guard picking up loads of 4-on-1s. We're not one of these factions which has got no one going 4-on-1. Okay? Like, every week, we have got people going 4-on-1, and we even had some brave, beautiful motherfucker win a tournament. Let's have a look what tournament he won, then. 44-player event in New Zealand. So, to be fair, you know, it is the down under meta. I know New Zealand and Australia are separate places. I do get that, but they're very close to each other. To be fair, it is the down under meta, so it is always a little bit weird. But hey, a win, if we're always fair with the Australian meta, and a tournament win is a tournament win no matter where you are. Going 5 games in a row undefeated is pretty fucking great. So yeah, well done to that guy that won that tournament, man. And yeah, Guard holding the line and incrementally just doing a little bit better every single week. Nice. Leagues of Votan. Leagues of Votan are having a bit of a resurgence at the moment. Maybe it's because Necrons are still around. But we've got 23 players, which is pretty good numbers for them. I mean, there's double the number of Votan players than there are Dark Angel players. That's fucking damning right there. 55 wins out of 115 games. 48% win rate, which is slightly above their average of 46%. They had 5 people go the distance, but no one won a tournament. So, Votan right now, they're kind of in a similar place to, like, Demons. They're kind of in a similar place to World Eaters, where they're doing good results, and they have some very favourable matchups, but there's clearly something missing. There's a piece of the puzzle missing. Maybe it's just a fact they have a lack of like datasheet variety, but there's a piece of the puzzle missing, which is stopping them from getting the big tournament wins. People were saying they did win like Bug Eater and stuff though, which is like cool. But yeah, Votan, right? I think they're solid. Okay, we confirm that they're solid, but I want to go a step further this week. I don't just want to say the same shit. When Votan came out in 9th edition, they instantly picked up a very bad rep. Very bad rep. They picked a bad reputation. I don't believe that reputation is deserved anymore. And the idea of seeing someone collecting Votan and being like, bleh, I think that is wrong now. I think that was somewhat justified to have that sort of gut reaction when you saw someone playing Votan in 9th. But I think in 10th, Votan have earned the right to be an accepted faction. And not every faction is accepted, but you know, you guys know what I'm saying. They've earned the right to be a faction that when you put them down, when someone puts them down on the table, you go, oh cool, Votan. They've earned that. And I'm actually pretty interested in the faction myself. Like, I might get some Votan. I was interested in them when they dropped, and the only thing that really is holding me back now is the only thing that held me back then was they were like, my only instinct with them is that they were like just overpowered, so I didn't want to go near them. But the thing is, the only thing I don't like about them now is their lore, and frankly, I have better headcanon. I think that basically if you go GW lore, that, and we just put that down with the other fire, the other lore dumpster fire, we just put all the fire together. You know, we put Votan lore, and we just put it in the same fucking flaming pile of dog shit that is like the female Custodes lore. We just put that down there, and then we'd basically just come up with our own lore, which is dwarves in space. I think that's the better way of doing it. Yeah. And I think, you know, if GW, if you're listening to this right now, I can literally rewrite your Votann lore for you in a way that would make people fucking absolutely love it and accept it. We discussed this on stream, like having the different, like the mining guild, the warrior guild, the engineer guild, how these like guilds don't get on and everything, and how each, you know, have like the, you know, it was how we have like the ranges and stuff. Like you just take the old world lore and just fucking put it into fucking 40k and you smashed it. Yeah. There you go. People, I haven't got the slightest clue what Votann lore is even about. Okay, all the Votanns are clones. None of them have any free will. And the Votann are not the dwarves. The dwarves are the kin. That's what they're called. They're the kin. The Votann are giant, like, city-sized AI cores. Like AI cores. Like AI constructs that the Votann worship. That the dwarves worship. So the Votann are the big AI cores which the kin worship, and the kin get their instructions from the Votann cores. That's what it is. So when someone places Votann down on the table, they're not actually placing Votann. When they place the Mars down on the table, they're placing down the kin. Votann lore sounds like Votann lore to me, it feels like it was written by the people that write Age of Sigmar lore. It's very high and convoluted. It's very high, and it tries to seem all deep and like fantastical and really like high level, and actually it's just overly complex, unnecessarily complex and convoluted, and actually very just shit. Anyway, moving on. Sisters of Battle. The Sisters of Battle. There's the guns with nuns, nuns with guns. Sisters of Battle are doing great, man. They've not been like on top of the meta for a few weeks. There was like a few weeks when they sort of like came like storming in, like kicked the door down, kicked every male in the room in the gonads, and then fucking blew the fucking cock off. And everyone were like, wow, this is a new top meta faction. And then it's just like they've gone all sort of they were all very, very exciting, and now they've just settled into being a solid upper tier faction, which is good. Sisters are powerful. They can certainly win games. They can certainly win events. They're popular enough that you see them fairly regularly around the tournament scene, and sometimes they just get that fucking run where they can kill everything that they come across. Yeah, I've seen a few Sisters armies at Just Play and Element recently. Do you know what surprised me? It was like the size of the armies. Sometimes you come across like Sisters armies and they're very like elite, and sometimes you can be. I'm surprised. So like I've literally been to it. So the last Just Play tournament I went to, there were 2 Sisters players there. One guy's army was fecking huge. It was like, wow, that's getting like close, like guard sized. And one guy's army was super duper elite. And so the guy that had like the bigger army actually did quite well, and the guy that had like the more elite army was actually struggling quite a bit. And I feel like maybe what that says is there are some Sisters units which must be quite overpriced, and if you focus on those, maybe you struggle a little bit. And there are, but if bit like with guard, if you fuck off demolishers and go for like vanquishers and like hellhounds and stuff, it's amazing how much you can cram into the list. So yeah, Sisters, going through the numbers, 20 players, very solid. Same as League of Votann. 53 wins out of 109, giving them a 49% win rate, which is right in the Goldilocks zone. And they had 3 people go the distance, but no one win a tournament. And their win rate has settled into being roughly in line with their average of 51%. So yeah. I remember the first day's 10, the Sisters were literally the worst faction in the game, and it was so painful. It's nice to see it stabilize. Yeah, I think that Sisters struggled the translation from 9th to 10th, but now that they've had time to do that, they're starting to really find their feet, which is good. Speaking of a faction which is finding their feet, oh my god, sir, Adeptus Mechanicus. It was not that long ago, probably a couple of months ago, when we were labeling Adeptus Mechanicus a dead faction, when we were putting AdMech in the same box, in the same coffin as Death, Watch, and they seem to have somewhat found their mechanical feet. They seem to have recovered slightly. Now, we're still not seeing great numbers of players from AdMech, but they're regularly hovering. They're threatening to go double digits every week, and sometimes they even manage it. 9 players, 22 victories, 45 out of 45 games. 2 people going 4-1, but no one going the full distance. 49% win rate is a significant increase over the average of 42% win rate, but 42% win rate is still not that bad on its own. Now, you look at all of these different AdMech detachments, and then you realize that all of these ones are shit, and all of these ones are actually holding back the real detachment, which is the Skitarii Hunter cohort. Basically, the current AdMech playstyle is we wish we were guard. The current AdMech playstyle is take as many Skitarii as you can get, flood objectives, take as many cheap fucking tanks and fire support things as you can, and basically, whilst the enemy is so busy clearing the objectives, shoot them in the face. They're basically, yeah. Corporate asks you to look at to find the difference between these two pictures, and it just says AM and AM, and it's like they're the same picture. What's funny is last edition, this exact same playstyle was very successful for AdMech. Who remembers beginning of 9th edition, AdMech running around with like 180 veteran Skitarii or whatever it was. I am surprised that it has taken people so long to basically try the same army again. But there must be some more nuance to it than that. I also suspect that we're starting to see people doing very well with Skitarii Horde because people A, have the models left over from last edition, and B, have been 3D printing them like motherfuckers because they have very easy access to AdMech 3D prints. Just to give you an idea of how cracked Hunter cohort was this week, 4 players had a 70% win rate. Now, what's interesting is 2 of those players went 4-1. So that means there were 6 games left over. So the other 2 players had to go 3-2. So they had 2. But they had every single player this week that ran Skitarii Hunter cohort had a positive win rate at a grand tournament. That is very, very telling. People might not like it. But AdMech has a very, very viable playstyle. Necrons. Necrons, 46 players. Oh, how the mighty have fallen very, very slightly. Necrons are still a pretty powerful faction, but people have moved on a little bit. They're still an A tier faction. I don't think they're an S tier faction. And as you can, what's interesting to see is basically overnight the player count half. The player count is essentially halved, and what that shows is the meta chasers. So Necrons will probably retain fairly high player numbers because what's interesting is you have like true meta chasers, people who are like, fuck yeah, I'm just gonna buy and sell armies, and I'm always gonna have the latest hotness. And then you're gonna have people that thought they were meta chasers who jump on a new faction, try it out, and then fall in love with that faction and go, you know what, I think I'll fucking stay here, I quite like this. And then you're going to have people who already had the faction that go, oh, I've got Necrons, oh, I've not really played 10th edition yet, fuck it, I'll bust out I used to play tournaments back in 9th, I'll bust out my Necrons, and then they play them and go, actually, I quite like 10th edition, and those people stick around as well. So I think Necrons will stay with good player numbers. I think their community's probably their community has awoken from the monoliths. In terms of their stats, 111 games played, 111 games won out of 223 games played. 9 people went 4-1, and they still managed to win 2 tournaments. Necron player numbers might be down, but that win rate is still looking at a crisp 50%, and that's very much in line with their average of 52%. Excellent. In terms of where those wins are coming from, now, Canoptek Court and Hypercrypt Legion are still the go-tos. Hypercrypt Legion is still the number 1 with 26 players and a 49% win rate. What's interesting is that out of the 9 players that went 4-1, that went all the way, Only 5 of them were in Hypercrypt, but none of them won a tournament. Where both the tournament wins came from was Canoptic Core, which had almost half the number of players, but it had 3 players do very, very well, and of those 3, 2 of them won tournaments. So Canoptic Core seems, at least this week, and it's, maybe we'll have to see if it's this case again next week, but I think we've seen this a few times now. Canoptic Core seems to be the faction that lets you get the overall win, whereas Hypercrypt is like Invasion Fleet for Tyranids. It's the comfy pair of slippers that you'll do well with, but you'll never win the tournament with. Interesting little side note here, though. Awakened Dynasty, which is the Silver Tide Necron Warrior spam kind of one, had 4 players. They won 10 out of 20 games, giving them a 50% win rate, which is technically higher than Hypercrypt. It's in the same... Look, not as many players, but it's in the same league as Canoptic Core and Hypercrypt. And either one of those players went 4-1. Hero Bob, Canoptic are the ones with Scabs and Doomsayers, right? Canoptic Core is the one that lets you start infiltrating Wraiths. It's the one that gives you the power grid. So you can start getting loads of rerolls and stuff. Hypercrypt is the one that lets you teleport everywhere, and Awakened Dynasty is the one that lets you get +1 to hit on stuff. Thousand Suns. Thousand Suns were marked to be one of the meta inheritors after Necrons. Well, they're in the top. They're in the top selection. Where are we up to now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So they're almost in the top 8. They're in the top 10. Necrons are 10th and Thousand Suns are 9th overall. They're in the top 10. Now, Thousand Suns, their fortune very much in line with the faction. Their fortune seems to wax and wane week from week. Some weeks they're on top. Some weeks they're a little bit lower down. But they're never out of the top 10. Never. An incredibly powerful faction. One that I think is only now starting to be recognized. For the longest time, I didn't think they were... To be fair, actually, since the beginning of 10th edition, not to wipe myself off, but since the beginning of 10th edition, I have been saying these guys have got potential. They're just, people are sleeping on them a little bit. Or it's not that people are sleeping on them, it's that people, the wider meta isn't paying attention to them, but the people that are playing them are getting very good results from them. Thousands have been very strong since the beginning of 10. What's finally starting to happen, and we're seeing with this with some significant player numbers increase, is we have been awakened to them in a little while in the MG community. Other people, the Thousand Suns community has been very aware of how good they are. Other people, the wider meta, is slowly starting to wake up and smell fucking dust in the armor. That's what's happening. Keep an eye on this player. Keep an eye on these player numbers. I think we'll see people. More people jumping onto this faction. That's for sure. 34 players, 84 wins, 168 games played. 6 players going 4-1 is a phenomenal result. 50% win rate this weekend, an average of 54%. The Adeptus Custodes, yes, the Banana Boys. What are you guys doing up here? So it appears that the stories of the death of the Custodes were greatly exaggerated because they're back this week. Now they had a 51% win rate, which is 6% up over their average of 45%. They even had a couple of players go 4-1. Which is very impressive. The big problem with Custodes is this number here. 20. Now, some factions would do terrible, heinous things to have 20 players. I mean, Deathwatch is crying right now that I'm saying 20 is a low number. 20, it's all relative. 20 is a very, very low number for Custodes. Custodes are a phenomenally popular faction on the tournament scene. Every tournament player worth their salt who isn't a faction specialist has a Custodes army sat on the shelf somewhere, painted in a minimum of 3 colours with a finger scoop of Astro Granite, just ready to go. So when their player numbers are not on the same level as Guard, just think about this, Guard has more than double the number of players as Custodes. When Custodes are, even if they've got a good win rate, when their like player numbers are not in the top 3, if not the top 1, it shows that this faction is struggling. Now, maybe if we see this win rate continue to do very impressive things, people will return, nature will heal a little bit. But I suspect that these numbers will stabilize around this. It's only a suspicion, I've got nothing to base it on, but I suspect it. In terms of people who are curious about where the division is in the Custodes community, no one is running Ulrich champions. It's a pretty much equal split, almost 50-50 between Talons of the Emperor and Shield Host. 11 for Talons, 9 for Shield Host. And in terms of the win rates, they're both 50%. So it seems like they're pretty equal. You might argue that Talons is a bit better, as they did have the 2 players that went 4-1. Chaos Knights. Nothing's changed. It's still War Dog spam. There's still a very reasonable number of players running the faction, 27 players. They're still able to go 4-1. They still are flirting around the Goldilocks zone. This week, they've got a 51% win rate. Normally, they're on a 45% win rate. But nothing has changed for Chaos Knights. Same shit, different day, same as Demons. Is it still War Dog spam? Yep. Goes, puts head back down. That's basically it. Let's get to more interesting things, like Orcs. Orcs! Wow. Orcs are going places. Holy shit. Orcs are really going places. Now, Orcs, I believe, were the most popular faction this weekend. And I can, for as long as they are unnerfed, I think it's going to stay that way. 2 reasons. 1, any faction that is obviously powerful is going to get jumped on by meta chasers. But 2, and I think we could see some truly phenomenal Orc numbers if these 2 factors collide, nuclear fusion as it were. Orcs are an incredibly long-lived faction. They've been around since Rogue Trader. They've been featured heavily and had an amazingly dedicated community for literal decades. And everyone and their mum either has an Orc army or has access to an Orc army or played Orcs at one point and will be nostalgic to jump on them again. So I expect this number to reach triple digits. On a busy week, that'll reach triple digits, no problem. Like, it will easily reach. And there's a few other reasons why that might happen. So if we look at the overall Orc stats, we've got 151 games won out of 298 games played, 11 players going the distance, and 4 of those actually winning tournaments. Overall, the faction had a 51% win rate, and on average, they've got a 54% win rate. Diving into it a little bit more, though, Dreadmob had 3. Dreadmob, which is almost like the don't push that button, had 3 players who did manage, one of which did manage to win a tournament, and overall they've got a 56% win rate. We had 9 players going Green Tide, which is really cool, and Green Tide actually managed to win a tournament and had a 53% win rate. We had the Big Hunt, which had 3 players, which is the Beast Snagger one. No one went 4-1, so everyone went 3-2 or worse, and they had a 46% win rate, which is one of the lowest this week. The traditional Orc detachment, the War Horde, only had 7 players, and that had a 34% win rate. So I suspect we probably won't see people staying on that much longer. Court of Speed has been completely abandoned. No one played it. So, but the important one is Bully Boys. Gentlemen, I hate to toot my own horn, but I did literally say, and this was because I talked to an Orc player about this, I literally said Bully Boys is going to be the most powerful detachment. It will be the one people go for. And I wasn't the only one that said this, by the way. A lot of people said it. And 39 players. more than every other detachment combined. Way more, almost double. Bully Boys has 39 players, 101 games won out of 191 games played. 8 out of the 11 players that went the distance, 8 of them ran Bully Boys. 53% win rate this week, an average of 57% win rate, and 2 tournament wins. Now this is the final piece of the puzzle that might make Orc numbers, like Orc player numbers, surge into the triple digits very quickly. Because Bully Boys is the elite Orc one. It's mega knobs, boys. If you have to, if green tide, if like with Turnus, when like, you know, their swarm army is most popular, people just won't commit to it because like, I'm not going to paint that many bugs. Like green tide is very powerful, but it's never going to have like huge player numbers because people don't want to paint that many boys or fuck around with using that many boys at the table. Those people, you know, I mean, I want to, you guys want to, but a lot of competitive players don't want to. But Bully Boys is hyper elite. It's like it's fucking mega knobs, man. You could crank out a fucking Bully Boys army probably over a weekend if you really commit to it. You just lock yourself in the man cave. So yeah, Bully Boys I think is the third piece of the puzzle, with the meta chasers, the traditional community, and then this, which will make the perfect trifecta to make Orcs an incredibly popular army. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're in the top 5 factions now, guys. Let's push for the burn. Let's push for the burn. It's the Adeptus Orcs Nodies! Indeed. Indeed. Why is quarter speed not liked? I genuinely don't know. I don't know about the detachment. I'm not saying there will be a reason. I just don't know it. I don't want to say something that's wrong. I'd rather not give him... I don't want to spread false information. I'd rather just say I didn't know. Getting in the top 5. Drukari. Now, Drukari are fine. Being in the top 5, I think, is a little interesting for them. But they've kind of been just ever since. There's a lot of factions right now that are below 50%. That's the biggie. If you look, like, there's a huge amount of factions which are on the wrong side of the Goldilocks zone, essentially. Drukari, since they got their Sky Splinter Assault detachment, which continues to basically 99% of the community uses it. Since they got Sky Splinter Assault, Drukari have comfortably sat at 50%. Sometimes they're a couple of percent above, sometimes they're a couple of percent below, but they're just comfortably sat at 50%. They have been able to have plenty of people go 4-1, and occasionally they get a tournament win as well. It's not that Drukari have suddenly shot up into the top 5. It's that one by one other factions have dropped below them and they've just stayed at 50%. That's what's happening with Drukari. Very, very good faction though, and Sky Splinter Assault continues to prove itself as one of the best changes GW has ever made in the history of competitive. Imperial fucking Knights, man. Ugh. Okay. So, Imperial Knights and Chaos. Imperial Knights normally... I mean, they fluctuate, man. They fluctuate. Imperial Knights continues to be a blind spot for me. I have to admit this. I know I say this every week. But I see, like, I genuinely see, I go to tournaments nearly every other week. And I see Chaos War Dog spam every time. I go to tournaments in different locations. And I just never see an Imperial Knight army. I don't know what they're running. I've been told... I have been told that it's not Armiger spam. I've been told there are some big knights involved. So I'm going to ask chat right now. Because I don't want to keep saying week in, week out. I don't know what Imperial Knights run. What are Imperial Knight players running in your area? This goes out to everyone on Twitch. It goes down to everyone on YouTube. If you have a Knight player in your community, what are they running? Whether they're being successful or not, just what are they running? Color Drew, it's got to be the Knight Lancer. The Knight Lancer is good. Canis Rex and Armigers / Warglaves. Canis Rex, I've heard people been saying he's been good for a little while. Genghis Khan, Canis, Castellan, Lancer, and Armigers. Armigers in New England, USA. Okay. So it seems like we're seeing one medium knight, which is Canis. One very big knight, which is the Castellan. One other knight, bigger knight, which is the Lancer. And then whatever is left over goes with the Armigers. That's actually really cool. Lancer strength 22 with free tank shock. Amazing. Was that 22 dice that you roll? That's insane. Is that 20 dice you roll for the tank shock? 22 dice. I might have to get myself some fucking... Imperial Knights, boys. Oh... That's cool. That's cool. That's really, really cool. That's really, really cool. Okay, I want to say a huge thank you to chat. Huge thank you. Yeah. Let me just say something about this. I am actually really glad that Imperial Knights are like that, because Chaos, just seeing endless waves of War Dogs being spammed for Chaos is kind of boring. Seeing an Imperial Knight army that consists of all the different tiers, all different tiers of Knight is cool. So I'm very surprised I'm saying this, but good guy Knight players? All the different levels, that's what I call it. All the different levels of Knight being represented. It feels like Imperial Knights aren't spamming. It feels like they're trying to, whilst they are a skew faction, it feels like they're trying to have balance within that faction, and that's cool. I like that. Good guy Knight players. Okay, we're breaking the top 3 on the podium. Coming in 3rd place is the Black Templars. Black Templars showing that they are once again, one of the best Space Marine chapters of the edition. With 21 players, that's pretty good representation. They have a 55% win rate. Interestingly, Black Templars are still struggling to get like full-blown tournament wins, but they have 5 people that are going 4-1. 2 of those people use Gladius, 2 of those people use Ironstorm, and 1 of those people was Righteous Crusaders. Looking at the breakdown, we're still seeing pretty much a 50-50 split of people that are competitively running Black Templars and are running not Righteous Crusaders, and then we are seeing that the other 50% of the community is the diehard Black Templars that will use Righteous Crusaders even if it's absolutely fucking tragically bad, which is cool. Which is great. So Black Templars, they're doing very similar things to what they've always been doing. I mean, Ironstorm Spearhead Black Templars having a 65% win rate is shocking to see. Like, ooh. But it is an anomaly, guys, because it's 65% this week with an average of 51%. So it's a spike. If it continues to be like that, that'll be very, very worrying. Firestorm looks worrying as well, but considering it's only ever got like one dude running it each time, it's probably again a skewy result. Looking at the averages here, Gladius and Ironstorm and Righteous Crusaders pretty much always all have a 50% average win rate, near as damn it, and that's good to see. That's good to see. Black Templars are looking real strong, but their average is 50%. So they're in the top 3 with an average of 50%. That makes them strong, but it doesn't make them a problem. Unlike our next two factions, which unfortunately I think are probably going to need sorting out. Firstly, we have the ever dreaded, ever hated, ever loathed, and yet every fucking edition ever present Space Wolf fucking Stormlands. Space Wolf Wolf Jail. The Space Wolves coming in second place. I shouldn't have said first. Coming in second place. First one that we're going to cover out of the two, but second place on the podium. 24 players, 68 wins out of 120 games played. 7 people going 4-1. No one winning a tournament though, which is surprising. 57% win rate, man. Against an average of 58%. Against a Stormlands average of 59%. And Stormlands having literally double more than double the other detachment's number of players, 16 out of 24. And then they had a 59% win rate with an average of 61% win rate in Stormlands. These 4 numbers here are all a problem. Like the 1, 2, 3, 4. These are all a problem. You can't have a faction which week in, week out is getting greater than 5%, and you can't have a faction which week in, week out is like that is, it's not a spike, it's like the average is above that. Yeah. So Space Wolf Wolf Jail is dominating the meta at the moment. It's not like winning tournaments all that much, although it can do, but it is dominating the meta. It's becoming a little oppressive, and it's basically going to become the new gatekeeper, and people are going to be building lists asking themselves, if you encounter Wolf Jail, what are you going to do about it? So it's a gatekeeper. It's a very powerful gatekeeper. It's a very one-dimensional gatekeeper. We'll have to see how the meta adapts and if GW does anything about it, because right, it's not winning tournaments. So will GW change it, or will people adapt to it? Do you know what? Gatekeepers, more like guard dogs, am I right? I love it. I love it. That's it. Guard dogs, man. I fucking love it. Cosmic Drew, what the fuck is Wolf Jail? Wolf Jail is where they take 3 squads of Thunderwolf Cavalry, max size, and attach multiple characters. I think you attach 2 characters to each one. Look at 21 Thunderwolf Cavalry style models. It might even be more than that. It might be 24. And then what they do is they rush you like orc pressure. And they rush you and they pin you in, and because they've all got invulnerable saves, and if you just roll those 4-ups, they pin you in your deployment zone, they put you in jail, they pin you in the deployment zone. And then by the time you've ground your way through the Wolf Jail, all the other little units that they have got around have been scoring points and doing damage to you. So Wolf Jail, basically, it's like goth pressure, it rushes you down, it's like big demons, it rushes you down, it keeps you busy, it bamboozles you, whilst they score points. The reason why it does it, the reason why it goes 4-1 consistently, but struggles to go 5-0, is because you'll go 4 games in a row where you do this to someone and they don't have the ability to blast you off the table, and then you'll get to that last game and you'll just encounter like Black Templar, Ironstorm, and you'll rush across the board turn 1. And turn 2, they'll blow you off the table. Because there's always one faction in 40k which is so fucking lethal that if you sprint across open ground against it, it will mow you down like the Battle of the Somme. Number 1 this week is Grey Knights. Water recovery. I think we can all tip our, even though some of you may do it begrudgingly, I think we can all tip our heads a little nod towards the Grey Knights, because they started off 10th edition in the same position that Deathwatch are in. Yeah. Now, what turned the franchise around for Grey Knights was Dread Knight spam. And because that Dread Knights getting their points like decreased, and I think they got like some of their weapon strengths increased, basically solved the one problem that Grey Knights had, which was they just didn't have any anti-tank. So they've got all the movement shenanigans. They're taking like 6 Dread Knights every single. They're taking 6 Dread Knights every single game. It's another example of a list with several big things that rush at you and bamboozle you, while little stuff jumps around doing objectives. Grey Knights are very powerful, but they are literally like 1 point change away from getting diddled back to where they were. Cosmic Drew's absolutely right. We need Inquisitor kill teams to counter the Grey Knights. If Inquisitorial kill teams are available to the vast majority of factions in this game, because any Imperial faction can take them, and they're worth it. If you take one Inquisitorial kill team, not only do you have a unit that can happily sit on an objective, and but we're talking a full size, we're talking the full 16, like fucking Eisenhorns in there as well. Like, only have a unit that can happily sit on an objective, but you've also got a unit that is very durable, so that can be a big speed bump. You've got a unit that's got decent damage output, and you've got a unit that completely and utterly cuckolds Grey Knights. Let's go through these Grey Knight numbers. 111 wins out of 196 games played. 12 people going 4-1, but only one person winning an event. There were other factions that won more events. Orcs won more events than them. They have a 58% win rate with a 55% average win rate. Now remember that there is going to be the mirror match involved, and Grey Knights have become a very, very popular faction. So this mirror match, the mirror match probably accounts for, I'd say, a 3 to 4% suppression of their win rate. So this is probably more like 60%, 60 to 62%. Now, if you're new to competitive play, you might not really understand what is the mirror match, and you might understand what like the win rate being artificially suppressed is. So if you have a very, very popular faction, it means that they are much more likely to play each other in a game. So if you get to a tournament and there's a round where you have Grey Knights versus Grey Knights, that's the mirror match. You've got the same faction playing each other. When those two armies play, what happens is one loses and one wins. Now that counts as a loss for the Grey Knight faction on this data, but also counts as a win, which overall pulls them closer towards pulls them towards 50%. Now, if your faction is incredibly popular, but your win rate on average is below 50%, then what you can have is your win rate being artificially inflated. Because you had one, let's use Death Guard. Death Guard got 1 win, 1 loss. That means that game resulted in a 50% win rate for the faction, but their average is like 40%. Well, then they've just actually benefited from being artificially suppressed, because that game actually brought them close towards 50%, right? But if it's the other way round, where you have a faction which is above 50%, and you have this mirror match happen, it means that they've been pulled close towards 50%. It means that their win rate is being suppressed. It's actually higher, but multiple mirror matches are causing it to go further towards 50%. So, in a faction like Grey Knights, which has got quite a lot of numbers, which has got 42 players, okay, which is like 5%, which is like 6% of all players at tournaments this week were using Grey Knights out of 26 factions, so quite a lot. That means that 58% is probably actually 2 or 3% higher. Like, it's very much guesstimation. You can actually work it out, but like my experience, 42 players, very, with this number of players we're playing this week, top of my head, I'm saying like that's probably a 2 or 3% win rate suppression. So actually, Grey Knights are looking at probably a 60% win rate this week. If I may, one last time, toot my horn and pat myself on the back and wank myself off a little bit. Okay, I actually said a couple of weeks ago, maybe it was 3 or 4 weeks ago, I can't remember. I said not that long ago at all that Grey Knights would become one of the new go-to most popular meta competitive armies. I didn't say they'd be the most powerful, but I said that they would be one of the go-to most popular meta competitive armies. And I said that the reason why Grey Knights were going to become we're gonna get this huge boost to their player numbers and their huge boosts to like their representation was going to be because of a double whammy. One, you had the fact that Grey Knights got a series of buffs. They got things that, like, you know, lots of points things for like Dread Knights and stuff. But at the same time this was happening, the Adeptus Custodes were getting a load of nerfs. Now, Custodes are a very popular faction because they're incredibly easy to paint and you don't need many models. All you need is to spray paint them gold, paint like any tabards that you see like red, and paint the ends of the weapons like blue, and then put some shitty Astro Granite on the base and you're tournament legal battle ready. Well, with Grey Knights, you have exactly the same thing. If they're powerful, and when Dread Knights are good, they're incredibly easy to collect. You need maybe 5 or 6 Dread Knights and like 30 infantry at most, if you know, maybe not even that much. And how do you paint them? Instead of you put the Retributor Gold to one side, and instead you get out the Ironbreaker. You spray the Ironbreaker, you get any tabars that you can see, and you paint them in like fucking blue or red, whatever you fucking want, but let's say red again. And then you fucking paint the blades on the halberds blue, you get the Astro Gunner out, you finger scoop it on the bases, and you're good to go. Getting a battle ready, powerful Grey Knight army you can get that painted in one weekend. And Grey Knights are a long-lived faction and have always been a popular faction, and therefore have a very well represented second-hand market. I once bought, it wasn't that long ago. Okay, it was maybe like 2 editions ago. So maybe it's like 6 years ago. So things may have changed. But I once bought, I think it was 30 Grey Knight Terminators, or was it 15? Let's split the diff. I bought about, it was 25. I bought 25 Grey Knight Terminators for 50 quid from someone in my local store. That's the level of secondhand market that they have. Yeah, they're going to get the same effect as the Custodes have. And that's why you're going to see these numbers go up. All right, but that just about covers it. I feel like it's starting to destabilize slightly. We're getting to this point again where we're seeing some factions which are dead, and we're getting to the point again where we're seeing a lot of factions below 50% and a few factions 50% and above. It's only natural when a big points update happens that things start going into flux a little bit. And I suspect that this could be a flux week. But I also suspect that people are starting to figure out the new meta and the new points costs, and the meta chasing is starting to happen. So I think we'll see what happens. There could be a trend that develops over the next 2 or 3 weeks where we see the meta become unbalanced once again. But the initial impact of these points changes and stuff that GW did with the Mutoran Field Manual definitely balanced a lot of things out. I think what is upsetting the meta, what is causing the imbalance to re-enter, is the codexes. GW pretty much got every faction to being between, like, to having like above a 40% win rate, and pretty much had every faction bar like Necrons like below like a 55% win rate. They were this close to the Goldilocks zone, and then in very quick succession we've had Orcs, Chaos Space Marines, Custodes, and there's probably another faction out there which I can't remember. Tau. Okay. And this has been boom, 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 like every other week. Boom, 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 boom. We're having these things. And every single time one of these codexes drops, we see the meta become a bit more fractured and stuff. Not a huge amount. They're not coming in individually and reshaping everything, but each one that comes in is like another little crack in the glass. So it's interesting to see how GW does a great job of like using, the balance team is clearly doing a very good job of constantly like patching over these holes with points. The codexes are what are creating the small holes that the water is starting to leak. And it almost seems like GW should release all the things at the same, if they wanted balance, and they don't necessarily have to want ultimate balance. GW is a company, what might be the highest thing on their priority list is money first, balance second. We will do balance, but the money comes first. And I can get that. But I think what we're probably seeing is GW likes the codex cycle because it keeps the hype train rolling. It keeps them always with something to be talking about, always something to be putting out, comms around, always something to be generating the chatter. But they also recognize that they need the game to be, to at least be creating the illusion of them trying to balance the game. They have to be shown to be putting effort into balancing the game because they've seen what happens when they don't put that effort in. AKA 7th edition, AKA GW almost goes bankrupt. So they know that they're a games company, but they accept that they are a company first. That would be my suspicion about the whole thing. I'm putting my Panzer slippers on. If you guys haven't seen these, I got this is a present that I got from, Matt, I live in your walls, P. He got me these for Thanatos, so that my feet wouldn't. He went down to Bovington Time Museum, got me these Panzer slippers, and then he gave them to me at Thanatos so that my feet wouldn't hurt whilst doing the event. So now I can chase my cats around the apartment going, Achtung slipper! Achtung slipper! There you go. That's all for now, guys. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed today's stream. And of course, as always, see you guys next time. Would you like to know more? If so, then please consider becoming a channel member or patron. By supporting the channel, not only will you be doing your part, but you'll also be helping me create more content for your viewing pleasure and unlocking a whole host of perks. You get everything from a badge next to your name, custom emojis, but the big one is access to the Mordian Glory Discord server, an online community with almost 2,500 active members. It's always popping off in the MG Discord. We've got channels for army lists, hobbying, tactics, stories, and even a pretty spicy meme section as well. For all you greenhorns that wanted to see the Mordian Glory Hole, today is your lucky day. And joking aside, I do want to say a massive thank you to all of the current channel members and patrons. You guys are amazing. Truly the lifeblood of the channel. I could not do Mordian Glory full-time without the incredible and generous support of my members. So thank you guys so much. And last but certainly not least, I want to say a personal thank you to all of my top tier patrons. These are the War Masters, the people who have truly gone above and beyond the call of duty. So a heartfelt thank you to Alex Dengal, Bon Vert, Mad Larkin, Marcus Roberts, Mark Panconi, RJ Scorpion, Swordfish Trombone, Try Again Bragg, John Stubbs, Nick Walsh, Diesel Fox, and August Barney. Seriously guys, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Your support is incredible and it makes a huge difference. Thank you so much. That's all for now. Hope you've all enjoyed today's video, and of course, as always, see you guys next time.